Yo, what is good everybody? Hope y'all are doing well today. So in this video, I'm going to show y'all how to make a soulful pain sample for Durk and Rod Wave. Honestly, this is probably one of the best pain samples I've ever made. I'm not going to say too much else. So with all that being said, let's just jump right into the sample. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the tempo. For this sample, I chose 164. Typically, these tempos are a little faster, so usually they'll be between around 150 to 170 beats per minute. And before I jump into any of the melody sounds or presets, I want to shout out Peezy. I think I've used a couple presets that I've seen him use in his videos, so I just want to give credit where it's due, so shout out to him. So for my first melody sound, I went into Omnisphere, specifically Keyscape, and got this Wash preset from the LA Custom Pack, and I just put in these chords. I ended up making a 16 measure pattern. Most of these are just the first 8 measures, and then I just copy them over for the second half of the pattern. So to break down the chords, I started with the D minor triad, made a second voicing, and then I went down to the 6th note in the scale, A sharp, and made the A sharp major triad and just added a couple of extra notes. I just copied these notes down for bass notes, and then I just added the C to transition in between the two. So to start with, the sample is in the key of D minor, and what I ended up doing is I just started with D. I went up 3 half steps to F, and then I copied this up 4 half steps to A, and that makes the basic triad. I just copied my root note up an octave to the D up here, and then I copied the 5th note in the scale, or the 3rd note of this chord. I copied that down an octave, and then once I had that, I copied it over and I just deleted the top note. After I had the first 2 chords, I copied this root note down to A sharp, or the 6th in the scale, which is just 4 half steps down from the root. So then I copied this up by 4 half steps, and then copied this one up by 3 half steps to make a major chord. And then I wanted to make this a major 7th chord, an A here. So a major 7th is basically just a normal triad, but you add a 4th note on top, which is just 1 scale degree below the root note. And then I also added a C just to add some more depth to it. Once I had all the chords, I selected all of them and then hit Alt S on my keyboard. I adjusted these knobs accordingly so I got a nice strum. And so once I had all of these, I copied it over by selecting the first half and hitting Control B. So by itself, this is what the first piano pattern sounds like. So after the first piano pattern, I just went to the channel rack, right clicked and hit clone, and I opened up the same preset in another channel, and I added my top counter melody. If this looks kind of confusing, that's probably because it is. This top melody probably took me about like 15-20 minutes to make just using my MIDI keyboard. And overall, I'm pretty much just using the entire D minor scale. I think the only note I wasn't really using in this counter melody was A sharp. Other than that, like I was pretty much just using every note, different octaves and all that. But I'm not going to go in too close and break down each of these. For the most part, I was just thinking of a melody in my head and I was just playing it out on my MIDI keyboard. Pretty much just put all this out, and then I copied it over and I switched up a few notes here at the end so that it leads into the beginning of the pattern a little bit differently. So for these types of beats, you definitely want to play around a lot with the note velocities. Not only does this make it sound more realistic, but it also adds a lot of character to your melodies. And you can also kind of have those lower notes that were quieter, like in this one, that add a little bit of an extra voicing to it, but it doesn't really change the actual melody itself. And for most of these, they're kind of automatically randomized because I played it in with the MIDI keyboard. And for effects on that, I just put on a low cut so I could cut out some of the key noises. So after adding the first 2 piano melodies, I opened up Contact and I got the Evolution Infinity Bank and I got the Tap Faster Lead preset. Similar to the last pattern, I just played this out on my MIDI keyboard, so I didn't really have any specific strategy. I was just kind of playing and punching in what I thought sounded good. And the only thing that I really did here was at the end with my channel pitch, and this is just to make a pitch bend on G. I don't normally do this with a lot of my guitar melodies, but I saw Pee-wee do it and I was like, man, what the heck, I might as well try it. And for this, I just used the pitch wheel on my MIDI keyboard just to bend it up. And then also for the modulation wheel on this last note, I turned it up just so this last note sounds like it's kind of drawing out a little more than just what it'd sound like with the default plugin. But overall, this is what this guitar melody sounds like. For effects, I put on this EQ, a low cut to cut out some of the picking noises, and then I just put a couple boosts in the low mids and the high mids. And then I put on a reverb, turned down the dry a little bit. I turned up the wet, decay, size, and low cut by quite a bit. I put on fruity delay 2 on the default preset and just put the time to this setting right here. And then in the mix level, I put it to about 10%. After that, I opened up X-Band and I got this next fretless bass guitar preset. So pretty similar to the bass notes in the first pattern, I tried to keep it pretty simple and just follow those for the most part. Similar to the last couple patterns, I just played it on my MIDI keyboard and quantized it and adjusted the velocities after it's recorded in. After adding the bass guitar, I went to Arcade and I got the chopped line and the Hakuna Matata bank. This is the bank that's playing the guitar licks in the intro, and this doesn't play with the electric guitar. This is just when the electric guitar is not playing, the clean guitar is playing. So like in the intro, like y'all saw in the sample preview, it's playing like this. So that one's more of a light accent. I didn't want it to be very overbearing like the lead guitar. So for effects on that arcade guitar, I put on a low cut and a little bit of a high shelf. And then I went to Fruity Reverb and I added a little bit of wet and turned the dry down a little bit and turned the low cut up. And then I went into Fruity Love Filter and got the low pass 2 preset, and I believe it just set it to default. And then for my last sound in the MIDI, I went to the Distant Voices line in Arcade and I got the Plateau bank. And with this, I just put in a few vocal chops and pretty much just rounded out the rest of the MIDI melodics. For effects on the vocal chops, I went into RC20 and I just put on some distortion to make it a little louder and added some space for reverb. And then I went back into Fruity Love Filter to the same low pass 2 preset and I just adjusted this parameter a little bit. So once I had all of those, I went into the mixer track and then I armed each of them. And usually in normal FL, these will turn red when you arm them, but in this FL skin, it doesn't do that. Then I hit Alt-R on my keyboard, set the mode to pattern, hit cut remainder, and then hit start. Once I had that, I put all those stems into the playlist and arranged them as such, and then I just added these couple accents on the bottom. I got these two from a couple loops. I just took the stems of the accents that they were using. So for this first one, it's just this guitar accent that you've probably heard before. So this was originally tuned to A, so I went to the audio clip settings and set the mode to stretch and then pitched up by 500 cents to D. And then what I ended up doing is I took this and just copied it over using shift click. I clicked on the top left of the audio clip and hit make unique. This way I can make a new audio clip without changing the other one. And in this one, I pretty much just put it down an octave. So instead of plus 500 cents, I put it down to minus 700 cents. So in sequence, they sound something like this. The last thing I added was this crash just to transition it in between the different parts of the loops cleaner. So once I had everything arranged, I put all the stems together and then I just opened it into a new FOP to add the drums. So once I had it rendered out, I pulled it up into this new FOP. I pretty much just kept everything the same. What I ended up doing is I pulled it in and then I double clicked on the audio clip. I set the project tempo to 164 and then set the mode to stretch. I put the pitch up by 1/2 step. So the key of the finished beat is in D sharp minor. And then after that, I just put in a few drum sounds. I tried to keep this pretty simple because we already had a whole lot of layers with the sample. So going into the drums, for the first drum sound that I used was this slap clap. For this, I tried to keep it pretty simple, just the third beat of every measure. After the clap, I put in my hi-hat. And with this, I just kept a 2-step pattern and then I just put in like a few rolls here and there. All of these, I believe, are using the 1/3 step snap to grid. After putting in the hi-hat, I put in the snare sound. I pretty much just put this on a pretty normal snare pattern. Just put it on these off beats here. Once again, I'm just using the 1/3 step snap to grid to put in these rolls here at the end, just to add a little variation to it. After putting in the snare, I then put in my open hat. And I pretty much had this just, for the most part, this is just meant to accent the key parts of the 808 pattern. Lastly, I just added the Spins 808 sample and I just turned up the out knob a little bit. Pretty similar to the bass guitar, I'm pretty much just following the same root notes of the piano and pretty much just adding notes wherever I feel like it, maybe a little accent or octave here. Alright, so that's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope y'all enjoyed it and found it pretty helpful. Thank you for sticking all the way to the end. Leave any feedback, feelings, or recommendations in the comments. And that's going to do it for me, so I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Roll up, Tez.